At the Capitol this week, a lot of talk about voting measures that Democrats want to get passed. Many of them are wrapped up in a piece of legislation called the For the People Act. Now, this bill has passed the House and now sits in the Senate, where supporters got a gut punch just a few days ago. There are 50 Democrats in the Senate. 49 of them co-sponsored the For the People Act. The 50th. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia announced that he did not intend to vote for the bill. And with unanimous Republican opposition, that pretty much dooms the bill to fail. Now, this bill, like a lot in Washington these days, is a mashup of a few different things. It addresses elections, ethics, and potential foreign interference, just to name a few. Republicans say it amounts to a federal takeover of elections, while Democrats say the bill is essential to counter some of the voting measures being passed in Republican states. So I wanted to get you some deeper context about what this bill would actually do.
Congressman John Sarbanes, the lead sponsor of this bill in the House of Representatives, which passed. So Congressman, this bill is among your party's chief legislative priorities, yet it appears, at least right now, doomed in the Senate. Could you tell us, I know there's a lot of things wrapped up in it. Can you tell us chiefly what it would do and if there are any parts of it that you believe could garner bipartisan support?
If you look at the bill, there's 5 or 6 things in there that really address those grievances. Number one, people want to get to the ballot box without having to run an obstacle course every 2 years. So we want to make sure people have the freedom to vote in America, that is protected. Number two, people hate this partisan gerrymandering that happens. And so we want to fix how redistricting is done across the country. We have a solution for that. We protect against interference and hacking from foreign actors into our election infrastructure. That's included in H.R. 1. We insist on ethics, a culture of ethics and accountability in Washington on the part of lawmakers and people who serve in the executive branch. And we fight back against the big money, the billionaires, the PACs, the super PACs. We lift up the voice of everyday Americans. That's why it's got strong support out in the country. We want to make sure that people in the Senate right now understand that support is strong. So we're going to keep making the case, hopefully get this over the finish line.
So the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, to no one's surprise, is just dead set against this bill. One of his chief arguments, he said, is that the federal government shouldn't have any role in regulating elections at the state level. Is that a valid argument?
Look, we have authority as Congress under what's called the Time, Place, and Manner Clause, the Elections Clause of the United States Constitution, to regulate how elections are conducted for federal offices across the country. So we can put in place standards on voter registration, on voting, mail-in voting, early voting, election day voting, and so forth, which is what we've done in H.R. 1. That's not a federal takeover. That's Congress exercising its authority to protect free and open federal elections.
So without this legislation, what are your fears moving forward for the midterms next year and for the 2024 presidential contest?
If you look at the voter suppression stampede that we've seen at the state level across the country in places like Texas and Florida and Georgia, Arizona, and other places where, sadly, Republican state legislators are putting all of these obstacles up in terms of people being able to access the ballot box, that has huge implications for what the elections will look like in 2022 and 2024. And this isn't about whether you're a Democrat or Republican. It's just about whether you're an American citizen who wants to cast your vote. Look, last November, we saw millions of Americans, Republicans and Democrats, take advantage of a lot of good options for casting their vote. Mail-in balloting, early voting, voting on election day, using drop boxes, etc. We just want to make sure those standards are in place going forward for the 2022 election and beyond.
Congressman John Sarbanes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to bring you a thorough and, most importantly, balanced perspective on this topic. So now we turn to Mac Warner, who is the Republican Secretary of State in West Virginia. So, sir, you were on Capitol Hill. You testified in front of a Senate committee in opposition of this bill. I know that there's a lot in it. What are some of your chief concerns about why you oppose it?
Well, what I did when I testified was I simply represented the clerks of West Virginia. And we've now had 55 county clerks write letters to Senator Manchin, Senator Capito here in West Virginia about their opposition to S1. And the main thing that they mentioned right off the bat is the same-day registration. That is not something that's needed here. It would confuse people, as well as it's a virtual, it's an essential impossibility, because we don't have the broadband connectivity between precincts throughout the many different places in West Virginia. Much is rural.
Are there any parts of this bill that you could support? I mean, when we talk about like expanding voting hours and expanding mail-in ballots, are there any parts of that that you could go along with?
The part that we discussed at the hearing was the maintaining the ability for military voters and overseas voters and first responders, voters with disabilities, to vote electronically. As the bill that's currently written would eliminate that automatically, but there was acknowledgement on the part of both senators on the right and the left, acknowledging the necessity to keep that. So West Virginia has pioneered that. So to the degree that that would be an amendment, then we would support that. But the rest of the things that you mentioned are not supported here in West Virginia. The extended hours, the extended early voting is simply not necessary. That's more pressure on our overworked and underpaid clerks. We have some counties, there's one county that only has 2 people in their elections division, and then to require them to have early voting over a 15-day period, simply unnecessary. And then for the extended hours, again, simply unnecessary. So this is why we are a strong supporter of letting the state legislatures write the laws that are applicable to that state, their customs, their people. They know best what it takes to run a fair election inside the state.
For Democrats' part, a lot of what they're claiming is the necessity for this legislation is, you know, they're targeting these Republican legislatures in Georgia, in Texas, in Arizona. Those are the places really getting a lot of criticism for the voting measures that they have approved. I wonder if you'd be able to weigh in on that. Why are measures like that necessary if there were no actual substantive fraud that took place in the
But you can always learn from the last game, the last election. This was a different election because of COVID-19. It exposed a lot more people to the absentee voting process, voting by mail, and so on. So legislatures need to go back and look at their processes. I would recommend everybody to read those bills. And when you read that Georgia bill, it really isn't voter suppression. That's adjustments to make sure that the people in Georgia have confidence. Now, I'm not trying to be an expert on the Georgia law. I'm simply saying that these are not onerous or as onerous as they're being made out to be in this political we're being pushed to the extremes, the left and the right, and let's not go there. Our job is to run free and fair elections.
That's right. The devil is in the details for all of these pieces of legislation. Mac Warner, Secretary of State for West Virginia. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Sure, Adam. Thank you.